this is the new version for your video of Test 1 review. We covered most of this material over in class on Friday, but we did not finish it, so I want to make sure that we go through this and make sure you understand all the expectations. Alright, it says the first problem says list the terms for the expression. A term is any coefficient or numeric or variable expression that is connected by multiplication or division. Okay, so here's multiply 4 times x to the 7th power. So what this actually entails would be a 4 and then 7 x's that are multiplied together. So to make it shortened, we write them as a short term like this. So here I have a term, so my first term would be 4x to the 7th. Then my next term would be the negative with the 3, so the next term would be negative 3x to the 5th. Then the next term would be the 5x by itself, so 5x, and the last term would be a positive 11, so there. Even though the 11 does not have a variable expression behind it, it's a term by itself. It's called what we call a constant term. So you will just list all of those out like that. Alright, in the next expression, the next problem, it says identify the coefficients. A coefficient is a numerical value that is multiplied times whatever the variable expression is. So the coefficients in this one would be 7. In the middle here, it would be a negative 8. And on the last term, that's an understood 1 in front of that x. So here, you're just going to be listing answers and put a comma in between them. Alright, simplify the expression means to combine like terms. So I'm going to combine like terms. They have to have the exact same variable expression. So the first things, I've got ABs, so I'm going to look for any other ABs. There's some more over here. So I'm going to combine their coefficients. They still remain ABs when I combine them together. So I just have a positive 9 and a negative 3, or 9 minus 3 would give me 6 ABs. Whatever those AB things are, I've got 6 of them now. And then when I look and combine here, I have a negative 4b cubed and a positive 4b cubed. So that would mean I have no b cubes left, because a negative 4 and a positive 4 would subtract off, and I would have, okay, understand, that would make 0 b cubes. 0 times b cubed is still 0, so I don't have to put anything out there because that would be 0. Okay, so here I'm asking to multiply, and now when we multiply terms together, our variables are going to change, because when we multiply, it changes the number of each variable that are going to be there. So if I have a 3mn and I'm multiplying it times an m to the 4th n, I'm now increasing my m's by 1, and I'm going to increase my n's by 1 in this one. So every time my variables, when I multiply, will change. So my numerical coefficients here would be an understood 1, here would be an understood 1, and here would be an understood 1. So I'm going to multiply the numbers. So I have 3 times 1 would be 3, and then m times m to the 4th would be m to the 5th, and an n times another n would be n squared. Go to the next term. 3 times negative 4 would be negative 12. Then I have an m times an m squared, so that's increasing to 3 m's. But the n is still here, so that has to be added on to this term. Then the next term would be 3m times 1m. So 3 times 1 would be positive 3. And then we have m times m would be m squared. And n times no more n's would still be an n. And the last term, I would have 3 times negative 1, so I have negative 3. And I have an m, but I have an n, and another n becomes n squared. So that would be your final answer, as this problem gets expanded by being multiplied by 3mn. Okay, so these 4 first questions should be pretty easy. These should be problems that everybody should be able to get these correct. Be very careful when you're writing your exponents, and I must be able to read your work. Alright, the next two expressions talk about evaluate. That simply means plug in. So they're going to give you a number wherever there's a variable, then you're going to replace it with that number. So here, my first expression, I'm going to have negative 2 times negative 3 squared plus 5 times negative 3 minus 3. So negative 3 squared will be 9. Wherever you take a number, doesn't matter positive or negative, to an even power, it always comes out to be a positive number. So I'm going to have negative 2 times 9. 5 times negative 3 would be negative 15, and a negative 3. So now I have negative 18, and a negative 15, and a negative 3. So negative 18, and that's another negative 18. Your answer should come out to be negative 36. Alright, the next expression has more numbers to be plugged in. So there's an A, there's a Y, there's a B, there's an X, there's a B. And so every place has a spot that needs to be changed. So the A is going to become a negative 1. So I'm going to put that negative sign out there, and then I'm going to have a negative 1. Y I'm going to replace with a negative 2. Plus 6. B is a 4. X is a 2. Minus B, which is a 4. So where the parentheses are, so I'm going to do these two parentheses numbers. That'd be a negative times negative would be a positive 2, but then I need to use this negative sign and stick on this answer. So this would come out to be negative 2. 6 times 4, 24, times 2 would be plus 48, and minus 4. So I have a negative 2 and a negative 4. It's going to give me a negative 6 and a positive 48. So then my answer should come out to be 42. Alright, the next numbers, I'm going to distribute the 24 on the left and distribute the negative 8 on the right. So here I'll have 24y minus 24 equals negative 32 minus 8y. When I combine my like terms, I'm going to add the 8y to the 8y that's over here, or 24y over here. That means the 24 has to move to the other side. So my 8y's are gone. Now I'm going to add 24 and add 24. So when I combine like terms here, I'm going to get 32y equals negative 32, and a positive 24 will be negative 8. I'm going to divide by 32 and divide by 32. This answer will reduce down, and I want the answer in a fractional form. So when I reduce it down, it will be y equals negative 1/4, because you can divide both of them by 8, and that'll simplify down. Alright, on the test, I'm going to ask you, make sure you circle your answers. Okay, here, I'm going to distribute through the parentheses, and then I'm going to come back and combine like terms, because that'll give me 3 things over here. So on the right-hand side, I'm going to have 11 minus 2y, and a negative 2 times a positive 1 would be negative 2. Over here, I have 3 plus y. I'm going to combine the 11 and the negative 2 together. So I'll have 3 plus y equals 9 minus 2y. I'm going to move the 2y over to join over here. You can move them either direction. So that gives me 3y, and those are gone. Now I need numbers to be on the other side, so I'm going to subtract 3. So I get 3y equals 6. Divide both sides by 3. So I'm going to end up with y equals 2. And there's your answer. Alright, number 9 has a fraction in it, and we're going to use a common denominator. But before we do the fraction part, let's simplify the parentheses and see if we can't make this easier. So 1 minus x plus 6. That's a negative 1 that's getting multiplied through, so that changes. 1 negative times negative times 1 would be, a negative 1 times 1 would be negative x. Negative 1 times negative 6 would be positive 6. So now on the left I have met 7 minus 2/7 x equals negative x plus 7. Now to get rid of my common denominator, I'm going to multiply everything by the denominator because I only have one of them. So I'm going to multiply here by 7 and multiply here by 7. Now, when I multiply times a whole number, I want to keep it as being a whole number. So I'm going to think of this as 7 times 7, which would give me 49. When I multiply times the fraction, I just want to think of it as being 7 over 1. So 7 over 1 times 2 over 7, the 7's are going to cancel off, and I would be left with the negative and the 2, so negative 2x. On the right-hand side, I'm just simply multiplying. So it would be negative 7x plus 49. Now, when I try to get those 49's together, those 49's are just going to subtract off completely. So I'd end up with 0 for my numbers. So I'm going to have negative 2x equals negative 7x plus 0 right here. If we forget that that's a 0, we have a tendency to become confused on the problem. So now I'm still going to move my x's over. So I'm going to add 7x, and I will get 5x equals 0, and divide by 5, x is still going to come out to be 0. Now 0 is a perfectly good answer. In fact, it makes it real easy to work with because I could plug it back in and check it, and it would come out really easy. Now on number 10, on your test there's going to be a blank right here, because the question says, is 4/5 a solution for this? Well, it's just saying, is this the correct answer? So check it and see, is it correct? So take the number 4/5, plug it into the problem, and see if it comes out to be true. So I'm going to say 5 times 4/5 minus 11, is that going to be negative 7? We'll put the 5 over 1 as you multiply a fraction. So the 5's are going to divide off, 1 and 1. So that leaves me with 4 minus 11 equal negative 7. And then it is this true? Question mark. Is it true? Yes, it will be true. Negative 7 equals negative 7. So your answer is yes. The problem says if your answer is not correct, if that's not correct, then find the correct solution. And then you would go off over here if your answer was no, and you would work the problem to get the correct answer. Okay, there are 2 word problems. So each of these, when you solve a word problem on my test that you're handwriting, first of all you need to identify what you're going to let your variable stand for. Then you have to write the equation and you have to solve the problem and make sure that you label your answer with whatever it is they're asking for. So if we read the problem, Allie can pay for her gym membership on a monthly basis. Monthly, okay, that's an important word in this. But if she pays yearly, okay, how are those numbers related? Well, it takes 12 months to make a year. If she pays in advance for a whole year, she's going to get a $50 discount, which means they're going to subtract $50 from her bill. Her discounted bill for the year would then be this amount of money versus what she would be if she didn't get a discount. Okay, so how many months are we paying for? And isn't that what that's what they're asking? What is the monthly membership fee? So we need a variable to represent how much she would be paying each month on a regular basis. So in this case, x would be a fine variable. So we're going to say let x equal the monthly, and I'm going to write this out, the monthly fee, okay, that she would pay. So if she pays monthly and she's going to pay for a whole year, she would have 12 times x for however much money she would have to pay, because we don't know what it is. But then they're going to discount her $50 because she's paying for the whole year, and that final bill would be $526. So now to solve it, you're going to add 50 on both sides. And you get 12x equals $576. 576. So then you want to get your calculator, and you want to multiply, and you want to divide it, see what it's going to be. So I'm going to say 576 divided by 12 comes out to be 48. Okay, so her bill that she would pay at a discounted rate would be 48 what? Okay, so we know that's $48. So that's what the answer you're looking for. Okay, label dollars on your answer over here and then circle your answer. Alright, the number 12 asks for fencing around a rectangular pasture. So this rectangular pasture would look like a rectangle. So I'm going to draw a rectangle. Then look at the information. The find needs a width and a length. So I need two answers, but you're only going to get to have one variable. So you go back and you check. Okay, it says the length is. So length we know, but width we don't know what that is. So on your picture, you're going to put your W where the width would be. Then you're going to read the information and you're going to base the numbers for length on whatever the width is. So if I know the width, I can figure out the length. So it says to get the length, you're going to take 8 less than triple the width. So I need to put triple the width, which would be 3W, and then I'm going to take 8 away from it. So 3W minus 8. You have to have the width, the W part has to be first and the 8 has to be at the back. So don't put the 8 in the front, don't flip them, because then it won't make any sense. Alright, anytime we use the words less than, you've always got to put it, you've got to have the width first and then take away something. So when I set this problem up, I'm not going to have to write a let statement for this, because this gives me all the information that I need to know and that I know that you know. So count how many W's. That's 3, and that's 3 more, makes 6, 7, 8. So my equation will be 8W. I'm going to take away 8, and I'm going to take away 8 more. Make sure that you get both of these numbers included in the problem. So that would be minus 16, and that has to come out to total 336. Now add 16 to both sides. So I'm going to get 8W equals 352. Divide by 8. So W is going to equal, use your calculator. And we have 352 divided by 8. W equals 44. Okay, so 44 what? What are the units? Well, go back and look. It's yards. Okay, so 44 yards. Now I'm going to take that number and plug it back in to find the length. So I'm going to say 3 times 44 minus 8. That's going to give me the length. Then do the same thing with your calculator. Times 3 for that. And subtract 8. So my answer comes out to be, the length would then be 124 yards. Okay? Circle both your answers. Make sure there's labels on those answers. Alright, so this page truly should be the easiest page, because that's the most familiar. Alright, on the back, we start talking about inequalities and absolute value. Now, absolute value is finding distance, so you have to remember that. Absolute value finds distance. Now, it doesn't matter which way you go on the number line when you're measuring distance. So we have to account, you must account for 2 different possibilities. So that means you're going to have 2 equations. Must account for 2 possibilities. Because I could be going on the positive side, or I could go on the negative side. So when we write an absolute value equation, you must have 2 equations. So the first one, you're going to account for the positive side. So I'm going to have 6 minus 3x equals positive 11, or 6 minus 3x equals negative 11. So I'm going to subtract 6. Then I get negative 3x equals 5. divide both sides by negative 3, and I would get x equals negative 5/3 for one of my answers. So this would be if I'm counting the spaces going in the positive direction. Now, if I'm going to count the spaces going towards the negative direction, I'm going to subtract 6, and I get negative 3x equals negative 17, and divide both sides by a negative. So I get x equals, this time negative divided by negative would be positive 17 over 3. So I got two answers. Now you can write them separately and put a circle around all of it, or you can write just an x and then put the two answers with a comma, and that's how you would do it online. So you have to have two answers. Be careful for your signs. These should be simple problems because these are really simple equations, but you have to remember to do two of them. So here I'm going to do the same thing. I have x plus 4 equals 8, or x plus 4 equals negative 8. Solve each one, subtract 4. Simple, x equals 4, or subtract 4, x equals negative 12. So there's my two answers. Depends on which direction you go as to where that distance would be. Alright, number 15 is a little bit different because one of the things you have to do is you have to isolate the absolute value. Okay, the absolute value thing here has a negative 3 with it. So that negative 3's got to move out of the way first before you can work anything. So add 3 and make it x plus 6 in an absolute value bars equals 17. Then you work the problem just like we did here. So you're going to have x plus 6 equals 17, or x plus 6 equals negative 17. So the basics of these problems, I could make these problems much more complicated here, but the basics is, do we understand how to do absolute values, and do we understand and remember that they have to be set up as two separate equations. So hopefully by driving it home here, you'll remember what it is you need to do for an absolute value. Again, we're going to get two answers. So x equals positive 11, or x equals negative 23. So here's our two answers for that problem. Okay, absolute value must have two types of problems. You've got to be working from both directions. Now, number 16 and 17 are inequality graphs. So the problem is inequalities have a wide range of numbers that could be answers. So we write the answer in what we call interval set notation, and then we can draw a picture of it on a number line. So on number 16, you need to draw the number line to go with the answer. So the first thing I'm going to do is move my 7x over here, and the other thing we want to try to do is keep variables on the left. Okay, we read from left to right, so if we keep our variables on the left, that helps us in our reading of the statement. Okay, so now I have negative 4x. I'm going to move the 9 to the other side, so I'm going to add 9 and add 9. So I have negative 4x is greater than 16. Now, the thing that's different for an inequality is if you divide or multiply by a negative, your symbol here has to switch. So this time I'm dividing by a negative. I'm dividing by a negative 4. So that means this symbol, when it comes down, can't be greater than, it has to be a less than symbol because we divided by a negative. So I have x less than 16 divided by negative 4 would be negative 4. Now on my number line, it says all of my answers have to be smaller than a negative 4. So on your number line, at least give me a representation of where 0 might be, and then you can just place your other numbers. So negative 4, and I want everything smaller than negative 4. Smaller numbers always go farther away from 0 to the left. But 0, the negative 4 has to have a hole on it because my symbol here does not include the negative 4. So I would put a circle here, and we talked about this in class. You could also make it a bracket. If if that's what you want to do. You can make it a bracket or a circle. Either one will work for me. And then we want all our answers to go to the left. So this is what I would be accepting as your graph. Now on this problem, everybody's going to go, oh, I don't want to work it because it has fractions. But we've worked these problems in class, so I want to encourage you to make sure that you attempt them. First thing we need to do is use our fractions to get rid of those denominators. So in this case, I need numbers that 7 and 5 go into. So here, because they don't have anything in common, I just multiply them together. So 7 times 5 would be 35. So my common denominator, my LCD, is going to be 35. So I'm going to multiply it on both sides, 35. And over here, I'm going to multiply 35. But when I multiply, I only multiply times numerical coefficients or fractions. Do not multiply times the parentheses, okay? We'll come back and take care of that. And over here, so I'm just going to multiply times this one. So here I have 35 times a whole number, which is 4. So 30 times 4 would be 140. Now when I multiply on this one, okay, here's our think bubble. 35 over 1 times a negative 1/7. Reduce the 7 and the 35. That'd be 1, that would be 5, and multiply what's left. 5 times negative 1 would just be negative 5. Now bring down your parentheses, x minus 2. Over here, keep my symbol. The second one, I'm going to multiply 35 over 1. So I'm going to do it the second one. 35 over 1 times 4 over 5. So this time the 5 and the 35 reduces. I get 7. 7 times 4 is going to give me 28 times 2x plus 1. Bring down the parentheses. Now distribute the negative 5 and distribute the 28. We don't have any more fractions to worry about. So I'm going to keep the 140 minus 5x plus 10. Negative times negative would be positive 10. Be careful in that spot. Greater than or equal to 56x plus 28. So I'm going to combine like terms on the left, and I'll get 150 minus 5x greater than or equal to 56x plus 28. Again, I'm going to bring my variables to the left since I read left to right. That just saves me from a chance of having to read it backwards. Okay, so subtract 56. Subtract the 56x. So a negative 5 and a negative 56. Is that right? Are we all correct on this? I just want to make sure before I do this. Okay, negative 61x greater than or equal to, I'm going to subtract 150, subtract 150. So I'm going to go to my calculator here, and I'm going to say 28 minus 150. I get negative 122. I'm going to divide by negative 61, divide by negative. What happens when I divide by a negative? My symbol's going to flip around. So this symbol has to change right here. So I'm going to have x less than or equal to, divide 122 divided by negative 61. Comes out to be positive 2. So there's my correct answer. So here I'm dividing by a negative. When I divide by a negative, that means I have to flip that symbol around. So here's my correct answer. Now this one you don't have to put on a graph. This was our correct answer right here. So number 17, you're not going to have to graph but one of them because there's more graphing to come. Alright, the last 3 problems have to do with absolute value inequalities. So absolute value means we got to account for 2 situations. The way we account for 2 situations is determined by what that symbol's doing. Okay, this symbol right here. So here's the thing, if it's a greater than or a greater than or equal to, that is greater. Okay, the word greater. So they're OR. The ER can turn into an OR, okay? All right, that means that on our number line, our answers should end up pointing in opposite directions. All right, if it's the other way around, it's going to be less than. So I have the word and in the back of it, so this is going to be an and problem. On our number line, the answers that we're going to get are going to be in between two numbers, so our answers would be like this. So you have to set up the problem based on what the form looks like. So here I have a greater, so I know that I'm going to have to set up the problem so that I end up with one problem that shows me the positive end going this way and one shows me the negative end going that way. So when I write this problem, I'm going to write it as 2. X minus 2 could be greater than a positive 7. So that's going to give me the positive in my number line. Then I write the word or, and then I have x minus 2 could be less than or equal to negative 7. So I use the partner for 7. It has a positive 7 or a negative 7. If I'm talking about going to the right-hand part of the number line, this one would have to have the positive number on it. If I'm going to talk about this end, it has to have the negative number, but the symbol also has to point in the negative direction. So you have to be careful setting this up. If you don't change this symbol around, you won't be able to generate this graph. So now I'm going to solve each one, add 2. Once I add 2, I'll get x greater than or equal to 9. So that means on my number line, I'm going to have a positive 9. And here, I'm going to add 2. And I have x less than or equal to negative 5. So here's a negative 5. Somewhere in the between here is a reference point for 0. Now, if I want my arrows to go the right way, like they're supposed to go opposites, I need negative 9, and it can be equal, so a solid dot. Oh, this was wrong. This should have been parentheses. I made a mistake on that. Okay, a bracket, and I'm going to make my bracket going to the right. That gives me that positive end. And now it can equal to negative 5, so I can either bracket it or make it a solid dot. Either way you want to do it's fine with me. And then go this direction. Okay, so if it's an open hole, if we go back up on the top of this one, I made a mistake right here. If it's an open hole, it would be a parentheses. Alright, so we got 2 answers, and we have the word or written in between them, so this would be what our answer would look like. Then when we have an and problem. Now on number 19, there should be a plus 4 in the middle of this one, and it didn't get put in there. So change that problem right there and make it absolute value x plus 4 less than or equal to 6. So now I need, this one says less than. Okay, so this one is going to be an and problem. Now, this makes a difference in how we set it up. So if I'm going to do an and problem, I want my x's, my answers, to be in between. So I'm going to set up the problem so that I have x plus 4 in the middle. And it's going to be in between the 2 possible values here for 6. So 6 could be positive or 6 could be negative. And I put the x plus 4 in the middle. So I'm going to pull it out of the bars and put it in the middle. And then I'm going to work the problem in 3 sections. So I'm going to subtract 4 in each section. And then I get negative 10 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 2. So this says all my answers have to be in between a negative 10 and a positive 2 for this statement to be true. So on your number line, you're going to put negative 10, and you're going to put a 2. Notice your symbols here all point the same direction. They point towards the left both times. Somewhere in between here is a 0, and I want everything in between, and the numbers are included. So I'll put a solid dot, or if you want, you can use a bracket. Either one works. You don't have to put both. And I'm going to shade everything in between. Okay, on this last one, this one again is a less than, so it's going to be an in-between problem. So I'm going to say 8x minus 4 less than 2, And I'm going to use that same symbol on the other end, but now I'm going to do the partner, which would be negative 2. I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So I get 2 less than or equal to 8x less than 6. Now divide everything by 8. That means we're going to come out with a fraction right here. So 2/8 reduces to 1/4 less than x less than 3/4. So on your number line, gauge where that is. Okay, 1/4, there's 0, and here's 1. Here's 1. Here's the number 1. Where am I going to find those numbers? Well, 1/4 is like, think about a quarter. Okay, a quarter of the way. So 1, 2, 3 fourths. So this would be 1/4, and this would be 3/4. Alright, so be able to gauge where it is on the number line. And I want the answers to be in between, and the numbers are not included. So I'm going to have an open spot here and an open spot here, and I'm going to shade in between. If you want to use parentheses on those because they're open, you can do that. Now, on the bottom down here, there's like a little bonus. Okay, you can get a bonus point if you'll take and remember what we did about writing an interval notation. Alright, if you don't remember that, fine, you don't get a bonus. But if you remember, we start from left to right, and so this number is pointing towards negative infinity. So on this one, I'd have negative infinity, and it always has to have a parentheses because we don't know where that stops. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to stop at -5, and -5 is included, and then I'm going to join that to the other end of the graph. I'm going to bracket and have 9, and that's going to keep going to positive infinity, and it's a parentheses on there. Okay, on number 19, I'm going to be in between two numbers. So the numbers are going to be closed in with a bracket on each end, and I'm going to have a -10 on the left end and a 2 on the right end. Okay, the same thing is happening here. It's the numbers in between, but this time they are not included, so I'm going to have parentheses, and I'm going to have a 1/4 on one end and a 3/4 on the other. Okay, if you can get through this review and you understand everything that's on it and you can work it correctly, then you'll make a really good grade on this test. So I hope you do your best. Bye.